Hello, in this first video we're going to talk about the IELTS in general. Now, the IELTS is an exam that has actually been formed by the British Council, the Australian Ministry of Education and the University of Cambridge. It's an exam that actually consists of 4 papers. So we have the reading, the listening, the writing and the speaking. And there are also 2 types of exams that you can take. So we have the academic and the general training paper. The academic paper is sat by all of those people who want to go and study at universities abroad, usually in English-speaking countries, or in English-speaking institutions in countries, for example, like Germany, Sweden, etc. The general training is actually sat from people who want to go to work abroad, and sometimes they may need to apply for a visa. The difference between the 2 types of exams is actually that the writing and the reading are different. The reading for the academic part is mostly based on academic and scientific sources, which means that the vocabulary is usually more difficult. However, for the general model, the reading is based on everyday sources. For example, it might be magazines or it might be newspapers, maybe even a leaflet that you get when you enter a museum. What happens because of that is that, let's say for the academic paper, a 23 out of 40 may correspond to a 6. But for the general module, a 23 out of 40 might correspond to a 5.5. So yes, it's easier for the general module, but the grade will also be a little bit lower. Now, 2 very important pieces of information is that the test result is actually valid for 2 years, and which means that if 2 years have passed from the last time you sat the exam, you'll probably have to sit it again in order to apply successfully to university. The band score, a separate band score is given for each part of the IELTS test. And the way that the overall grade is calculated is if you add up the 4 scores of listening, speaking, reading and writing. So for example, if you get a 6, 6, 7, 7, and then you divide those by 4, you'll get a 6.5 as an overall grade. But you're quite lucky, because the grading works for you, which means if you, for example, get a 6.26, it'll become a 6.5. If you get a 6.76, then it becomes a 7. So if you get just above half the mark, then it goes to the closest higher mark. As you can see here, we have 9 bands, and the expert user, that means really that somebody talks like a native speaker, they get a 9, and 8 is just below a native speaker. The band 7 or 7.5 is what usually the best foreign speaking students aspire to. It's very difficult to get an 8 or a 9. However, if you're extremely good, obviously you can get it. As an examiner, I have actually awarded in the past an 8 or a 9 for quite a few students, but they were absolutely excellent, sometimes even better than native speakers because their vocabulary was very advanced. 6, 5, 4, it drops. 6 is average, meaning, for example, that you can talk quite well in everyday situations, but you might lack vocabulary for more advanced situations. But 5, 4, 3 is usually quite low, and you need quite a lot of work to get up to a 6.5 or a 7, maybe 6 months intensive lessons, 1 year intensive lessons. So that's the general information for the IELTS, and I do wish you from the bottom of my heart very good luck when you take the exam.